Hello everyone, this is Rob Schelkun and I am a synthetic organic chemist in the Forensic Chemistry Division at Cayman Chemical. Today I'd like to give an update regarding synthetic cannabinoids that transpired in 2021. Specifically, I'd like to review the most interesting recent changes on the synthetic cannabinoid landscape and the new chemical structures we've observed for syncans, as well as review the semi-systematic naming system we've adopted at Cayman in light of these new structures. While synthetic cannabinoids may not be as popular as they were in the last decade, there is still activity going on with new chemical structures being identified. For the first half of 2021, the DEA reported 40 identifications of syncans, with MDMB-4EN Panaca having the most cases. A new syncan, ADB-FUBIATA, was detected for the first time. As you can see from the list of syncans identified, they are all indole or indazole carboxamides. Here is a list of additional new syncans Cayman has encountered in 2021. You will notice most of these belong to the indole-indazole class, with slight modifications to the alkyl chain portion of the molecule. This has been a common strategy by the illicit labs to make minor modifications to the existing indole-indazole class of syncans. Some new alkyl chains observed in 2021 include a hexyl chain in ADB-hexanaca, a phenethyl chain in ADB-fentanaca, a norbornyl methyl chain in cumyl-NB-mica, and a benzyl group in MDMB-benzica. We also saw a new gamma-carbolin-1-one MMB-fubiclone with a valine ester-like group replacing the cumyl group previously seen in this series. Even though the prevalence of syncan usage has decreased since peaking in the last decade, they remain a worldwide health issue. The UNODC and EMCDDA in May of 2021 announced their concern over the increasing occurrence of vaping products being adulterated with synthetic cannabinoids in order to raise public awareness of this issue. Also in May of 2021, the Office of China National Narcotics Control Commission announced plans to place several classes of synthetic cannabinoids under national control starting in July of 2021, using a generic class definition approach. This was a major development in China that could possibly lead to new syncan chemical scaffolds being developed to circumvent these regulations in the same manner as what happened when China moved to regulate the generic fentanyl scaffold in 2019. The various chemical classes covered by this generic ban are defined by these 7 generic structures using both specific and broader definitions of the generic terms X, Y, and Z in R1 through R5. By using this approach, a large number of different compounds can be regulated without having to name each one specifically. Here are some examples of syncans that would be covered by this general ban. This general structure covers the majority of syncans that fall into the indole, azaindole, and indazole classes as shown here. This second generic structure would cover indazoles that have the alkyl chain at the 2' position. This third general structure would cover the gamma-carbolin-1-ones like cumylpegacolone. And this fourth general structure would cover both pyroles and pyrazoles. Continuing with the remaining general structures, this first structure covers the carbazoles such as EG2201 and MDMB chimsezca. The second structure covers benzimidazoles like fubamida, and the last structure covers the hydroxycyclohexylphenols like CP47497. No matter how well a general chemical class regulation is written, there are going to be structures that fall outside of the regulations, such as the case here with the pyrazoles. I would like to point out that the general structure for the pyrazoles only covers the pyrazoles that have a chemical structure like the one on the left, and not the structure on the right where the alkyl chain is attached to the other nitrogen in the pyrazole ring. The reason for this is that in the general structure, Y is defined as being either nitrogen or CH. There is no provision for banning pyrazoles with the alkyl chain when Y equals nitrogen. Consequently, the structure on the right is not banned. The reasons for this apparent oversight are unknown, but they may be due to historical reasons. The first pyrazole example appeared in 2015 and was known as AZ-037. It was drawn in this manner, probably to resemble the indole and indazole syncans already known. One website selling this compound actually provided an NMR of their material. When Cayman undertook the synthesis of the molecule, carried out by my co-presenter Danny St. Germain, our NMR matched theirs. However, further 2D NMR studies revealed the structure was actually the other isomer with the alkyl chain on the other nitrogen in the pyrazole ring. Our suspicion that the advertised structure for AZ-037 was wrong was bolstered by this 2015 publication in Forensic Toxicology by Uchiyama, in which they showed the cyclohexylmethylpyrazole analog ADB-FUBIATA that they isolated from plant material obtained on the street was indeed alkylated on the other nitrogen just as we had found. The distinction of which nitrogen the alkyl chain is attached to in the pyrazole ring is important because it will determine if a new pyrazole syncan is covered by these Chinese regulations. And now I'd like to tell you about a new pyrazole syncan that recently surfaced. In December of last year, this new unknown that was suspected to be a syncan surfaced that didn't match anything we had seen previously. Analysis carried out by researchers in the UK indicated this new syncan to be the pyrazole 3,5-ADB-FUBIATA. This compound is currently under development at Cayman and is also not covered by the Chinese ban due to the reasons I had stated earlier. Now I'd like to move on to a second new syncan structure we've come across last year. Shortly after the Chinese ban took effect in July of 2021, a new substance started showing up in various countries that had not been observed previously based on the GC mass spec data of the unknown. Cayman was asked to help with its identification. It was suspected that this substance may be a new syncan based on information regarding the seizure of the samples. The 109 peak in this unknown is observed in other syncans with a 4-fluorobenzyl piece, and the 395 peak was exactly 14 units higher than a known syncan. During the time we were working on this new unknown compound, an independent report appeared on the Russian website apsin.com for a new syncan that just so happened to have a mass of 395. Apsin reported the new structure was determined to be a modified version of ADB-FUBIATA that contained an additional CH2 group shown here, and they chose to name this molecule FUBACADB. When ADB-FUBIATA and this new syncan are placed side by side, you can see how similar they are. The only difference between these two structures is the addition of the methylene spacer between the indole 3 position and the carbonyl group attached at that position. ADB-FUBIATA was first reported in the Forensic Toxicology article from 2016. This simple addition of a CH2 group to ADB-FUBIATA may seem trivial, but this change is key as to why this new compound is not covered under the new Chinese regulations. The reason this is the case is because the regulations as defined in this general structure covering indoles only bans indoles where the carbonyl of the top portion of the molecule is directly attached to the indole at the 3 position. That is not the case in the new structure due to the methylene spacer. Now that we had a good idea as to the structure of the new syncan, the final action needed was deciding on a name. ADB-FUBIATA was named in the forensic toxicology paper from 2016 using a semi-systematic method by combining certain letters of the structure's chemical name to form the new compound code name. Although the name FUBACADB appears to be derived in a similar manner, it doesn't indicate if the molecule is an indole or indazole the way FUBIATA and FUBINACA do. We also wanted a name that was close to ADB-FUBIATA such that one would recognize this new compound as an analog of ADB-FUBIATA. Working with Dr. Donna Ayula at Cayman and Dr. Alex Kwiatkowski at MPS Discovery, we settled on the name ADB-FUBIATA. So how exactly did we come up with the name ADB-FUBIATA? Naming compounds is a big issue in the forensic community, and we put a lot of effort into deriving these names to avoid possible confusion later on. The method for naming syncans that we use at Cayman first appeared in a forensic toxicology paper by Nahoko Uchiyama in 2012. In this paper, she described the identification of two new syncans, Apica, also known as 2-NE1 or SDB-001, and Apinaca, also known as AKB-48. This paper was followed up in 2013 with a report on two new syncans, AB-Pinaca and AB-Fubinaca. These compounds originated from legitimate research for pain management by Pfizer in two patent applications from 2009 and did not have any company name designations. As can be seen here for the four compounds, the names Apica, Apinaca, AB-Pinaca, and AB-Fubinaca are derived from the compound's formal chemical names. Letters are chosen from the name that correspond to the different parts of the molecule and combined to give the final systematic code name. The versatility of this method is that it can be applied to any syncan to derive a unique name for the molecule that is independent from the compound's origins. Let's take a closer look at the details of this naming system and how we came up with the name ADB-FUBIATA. Here are two similar syncans, the indole ADB-FUBIATA and the indazole ADB-FUBINACA. The structures are color-coded to divide the molecule into four parts: the head, linker, core, and tail. This classification of molecular parts can be applied to any syncan. The letters used from the chemical name to designate each of the four parts in the molecule are colored accordingly. For any syncan named with this method, the order of the letters to designate the parts of the molecule follow the order head, tail, core, linker, because that is the order they appear in the chemical name. Using this method, the indole ADB-FUBIATA is easily differentiated from the indazole ADB-FUBINACA by using the letters I for an indole and the letters I and A to represent an indazole. Applying this method to our new syncan structure, we wanted a name that would be unique but also closely resemble the indole ADB-FUBIATA on which it is based. The only issue here was what letters to use for the acetamidal linker, as the letters for the head, core, and tail portions of the molecule were already established. We settled on the letters ATA for the acetamidal linker to give the final name ADB-FUBIATA. We felt this name would convey a sense of this molecule is similar but is still different from other syncans. When we were thinking about this name, we were also planned for the possibility of what if an indazole version were to appear. In this case, the indazole version would be named ADB-FUBINATA. If you would like more information about ADB-FUBIATA, MPS Discovery has published a monograph for this molecule that can be downloaded from their website. Also, Cayman Chemical offers a reference standard. While we were working on this molecule, an article was published in Drug Testing and Analysis in October 2021 that reported on 3 new structures post-syncan structural class ban from China. In this paper, they referred to this new syncan, ADB-FUBIATA, as AD18. They also reported on 2 additional structures that I will discuss later. This paper originated from the Drug Intelligence and Forensics Chemistry Lab of the Ministry of Public Security, Beijing, China. This paper has a full characterization of the 3 new syncans that they identified from recently seized materials. They have a great deal of various mass spec and NMR data. As to where the name AD18 came from, it most likely originated from illicit sites that sell direct to the users. Here are screenshots of 2 such sites. One of these sites even mentions this new syncan is a modern replacement for ADB-FUBIATA. Earlier, when I was explaining how we arrived at the name of ADB-FUBIATA, we wondered if we would see an indazole version at any time. Well, it turns out we didn't have to wait long. A new syncan called 7-ADD appeared late last year on another of these direct-to-user websites. The structure's a little blurry, but if you copy the chemical name into ChemDraw, you get the new syncan, ADB-FUBIATA, which is available from Cayman. Using the semi-systematic naming method for syncans can be a little confusing. Cayman offers a free wall poster, laboratory guide for synthetic cannabinoid identification and naming that provides some guidance on naming, as well as some common mass spec fragments observed for synthetic cannabinoids. I have also included a link to a 2019 publication in the journal Clinical Toxicology entitled Synthetic Cannabinoid Receptor Agonists, Classification and Nomenclature for more information. Earlier when I was discussing ADB-FUBIATA, I mentioned this drug testing and analysis paper from October of 2021 that reported on 3 new syncans identified after the Chinese class-wide ban. The other 2 syncans mentioned in the paper are referred to as analogues of MDA-19. We were also aware of these new compounds prior to this publication. The CFSRE NPS Discovery and Cayman Chemical published an announcement for the identification and naming of 3 new syncans, what we call as a general class the OXIZIDS. I would like to discuss this final class of new syncans from 2021 and how we settled on the name OXIZIDS. So how did the OXIZIDS come about? In the summer of 2021, Cayman started receiving requests for help identifying GC mass spec unknowns for this new class. We also noticed chatter on Reddit and other user forums discussing a new syncan 5C-MDA-19. When we determined what MDA-19 was, we suspected the 5C in 5C-MDA-19 stood for 5 carbons. We also became aware of a 5-fluoro version of this new class. Let's take a look at the origin of MDA-19. This molecule is an N-alkylated isotin acylhydrazone from the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas, published in the Journal of Medicinal Chemistry in 2008. It came out of a program looking at treating neuropathic pain by targeting the CB2 receptor selectively over the CB1 receptor. The CB1 receptor is responsible for the psychoactive properties of cannabinoids. Even though MDA-19 was selective for CB2, it still possessed activity at the CB1 receptor. You can see the similarities between this molecule and the other legacy syncans discussed in this talk. And as far as we can tell, this molecule is not covered by any of the chemical classes in the new Chinese regulations. The references listed here describe a number of other analogues that were synthesized and evaluated for their CB2 activity. Now let's discuss how we settled on the name OXIZIDS for this new class of compounds. We wanted to stick with the semi-systematic method described earlier to maintain continuity, as well as we wanted to get away from using a naming system from legitimate neuropathic pain candidates and referring to every new analog from the illicit market as a variant of MDA-19. We needed to come up with a new name, so just as we had done for ADB-FUBIATA, we applied the head, tail, core, linker naming strategy to this molecule to see what we could come up with. Starting with the chemical name, we looked for unique letters to use for each of the molecule's parts. We decided to use BZO to refer to the benzoyl head group, ZID to refer to the hydrazid linker group, and the letters OXI to refer to the 2-oxoindole core. It doesn't matter if the order of the names of the 4 parts of the molecule are not in the same order as head-tail-core linker. We just rearrange the letters in that order to get the new name. Using this new OXIZID name for this class of molecules, you can see that we've renamed MDA19 bezohexoxizid, where hex is used to designate the hexyl tail. The pentyl tail analog gets the name bezopoxizid, and the 5-fluoropentyl analog gets the name 5-fluorobezopoxizid. After we publish the announcement on these 3 oxizids, we have presumptively identified 2 more oxizids, bezochemoxizid with a cyclohexyl methyl tail, and bezo-4-en-poxizid with the 4-pentenyl tail. Here is the EI mass spec for bezopoxizid. The molecular ion is clearly visible at 335. The 2 major fragments for this molecule, the peak at 230 and the peak at 105, result from the cleavage of the acyl hydrazid CN bond here. The 5-fluoropentyl analog, 5-fluorobezopoxizid, shows similar fragmentation to give rise to the fragments 248 and 105, in addition to the molecular ion at 353. Anyone wishing to obtain more analytical data for these oxizids can refer to the drug testing and analysis paper cited earlier and again here. You can also access these analytical reports from NPS Discovery's website using these links. Cayman Chemical also offers reference standards for these 5 oxizids on our website. Now, before I conclude my presentation, I'd like to go back to cann naming and address the use of the terms binaca and butanaca. These terms are often used interchangeably when referring to an indazole molecule with a butyl chain, like here in 4F-MDMB butanaca. The binaca name was given to this molecule in a tweet by Peter Blankart on November 23rd of 2018. Sam Bannister suggested the term butanaca for butyl tail and binaca for benzyl tails. Cayman suggests using butanaca for indazoles with butyl tails. We had been doing this before Dr. Bannister's tweet because in 2016 a paper was published in Forensic Toxicology where they identified and specifically named the cann shown here as ADB-binaca. You will notice it has a benzyl tail. This is why Cayman went with butanaca for butyl indazoles. So, in order to minimize confusion with cann names, Cayman will always use BUT for butyl tails, and will use the term benz for new canns with benzyl tails. Names for legacy canns with benzyl tails using the letter B to designate the benzyl tail will remain unchanged. In summary, the 3 main points that I'd like to leave you with are first, the introduction of synthetic cannabinoid structural class regulation in China appears to have led to more novel synthetic cannabinoid scaffolds. Second, new cannabimimetic scaffolds recently encountered include the OXIZIDS series and a new methylene spacer, ADB-FUBIATA. And third, the NPS designer drug marketplace continues to evolve and traffickers are getting increasingly creative and bold. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the organizers for putting together this webinar and workshop, the entire Forensic Chemistry Division at Cayman, especially my co-presenter, Danny St. Germain, for her helpful discussions, and Donna Ayula for her encouragement and help in doing this presentation, the people at CF SRE NPS Discovery, especially Alex Krotulski for his help with naming, and Cayman Chemical for sponsoring this workshop. Thank you very much.